Hey Rogues and Witches, I got and gilded the title for the first Arms Week event, Sharpshooter, as well as gilding the title for this year's Solstice, with 1 week remaining. I want to do a little bit of reflection on these events and the state of the game currently. I love Destiny, I love playing a Hunter. Hunters are one of my favorite rogue classes in all of gaming. This game is close to my heart, I enjoy it a lot. And I've had some thoughts. So the most time-consuming parts were to finish both events' entire reward tracks, and for Arms Week to win 10 matches of hardware. The second part of that is annoying because it doesn't register retroactively. You had to finish the actual first 4 triumphs in order to begin progressing your 10 wins, by which point you probably played a lot of hardware already and you're probably pretty exhausted of the entire affair. This is how gilding works normally, of course, but that doesn't make it feel any better. Normally this wouldn't be a problem, but Arms Week is only 1 week long, then you can no longer make progress because it goes away. Whatever you did, that's your lot. Starting from day 1, we had a bug that prevented players from getting XP by doing activities, so people were understandably stressed. While it was fixed, it did mean 1 or 2 full days of a tight 7-day time window counted for much less than intended, which makes players feel rushed and makes this event less pleasant as a result. And as far as I'm aware, there was no catch-up mechanism instated to kind of, make things right. Hand cannons are goodwill generators. This first Arms Week was based on hand cannons as a weapon type, which is a huge part of the reason why it was fun for me, and I would imagine much of the player base. In terms of sheer feel, the joy and pleasure of the kinesthetics of using a particular weapon, hand cannons are emblematic. For many players, they are the weapon type that exemplifies and represents Destiny as a game, as an experience. When you close your eyes and you think of Destiny guns, you probably think of hand cannons as one of the first few that immediately come to mind. Honestly, they were likely the first one, full stop. So, having the first Arms Week focusing on hand cannons was a strong opening move. Players loved this weapon type ever since 2014. So I enjoyed Arms Week for what it was, but I already know that when another one of these rolls around and the weapon in focus is something I dislike using, like sniper rifles or whatever, it will be much less enjoyable for me, especially given the time pressure, and so the fun factor will fade even quicker, and thoughts and feelings like these will arise even sooner. The new spread shot or pellet hand cannon archetype is pretty fun. I don't have that much to say about it. Being a shotgun with primary ammo, this weapon type has a severely nerfed version of 1-2 punch that players were initially looking forward to, but it is so weakened compared to 1-2 punch that uses special that it's basically not worth using for that perk if that's what you were excited for. The weapon type as a whole is a menace in PvP though, much to my suffering. The portal is already stale. One of the huge issues this event is laying bare, and that Solstice soon after somewhat continues to, is that there is even less variety to meaningfully engage with in Destiny than has been the case for the entire time I've played the game. I started in Season of the Haunted, though I did play Red War when it first came out, so I'm very accustomed to having some variance in the things I'm chasing every season. A little updating storyline, some kind of seasonal activity to get better and faster at while grabbing triumphs from, a seasonal seal or title, that kind of thing. Reclamation, which isn't really much of a season at all despite in-game tabs and screens labeling it as such, doesn't have any of these things. There is nothing to do in this game, in a way much more blatant, overt, and less disguised than it's ever been. Players complain online, quite rightly, that the leveling grind is annoying, arduous, and most efficiently done with methods that cause you to have the least fun. This makes sense, and so there's a bit of clamor for Bungie to smooth out leveling up in some way. But I suspect that they cannot actually do this, and the reason why is because this is the video game now. There is nothing else to do but log in, do your daily portal stuff, do your weekly seasonal challenges if you have any left or even care about those, and then grind, basically, until you're sick enough of it that you log off for the day. For the average player, this is the only remnant or outstanding progression left to engage with after they finish the campaign, and it's not even very long if you do quite a lot of it. Arms Week is an event, but all it does is cause us to engage with existing activities you've already played thousands of times, no more differently behaviorally than finishing some gunsmith bounties. I admire the idea, and To be fair, the new little mechanics that volatile mods give our seasonal weapons, the hardware game mode and Crucible, those are both pretty fun, though hardware is of course going away, but it's apparent at a glance that everything Destiny is doing right now is some way to cut costs, both money and time, when it comes to developing any kind of content at all. And it has reached the extent that the game is hurting for it quite noticeably. Even hardware itself is just normal Crucible modes with no abilities, not exactly the most challenging, resource-intensive, or fresh thing to iterate on and get through production, you know? It is enjoyable, but it's existing resources smartly deployed, and that is basically the extent of what they can do for us right now. A seasonal activity is expensive, so we simply do not get any. A seasonal storyline is expensive, so we simply do not get any. The state of the game right now is what happens when you mistreat, lay off, and ritually sacrifice your staff at the altar of Pete Sparrow Collection, to the point where the game itself is noticeably bleeding and breathing ragged for it. It feels like they're doing the best they can, and that best is not very good at all. Its lack laid bare extremely quickly. Solstice did help this feeling of freshness, but only for the first week. It is materially rewarding to play, which is being celebrated by the player base. You do genuinely get quite a lot of loot from playing Portal activities with Solstice modifiers, and those Solstice modifiers are enjoyable to be sure. My favorite is Igniter. Precision hits against Scorch combatants cause ignitions. There are a lot of ways to Scorch in the game currently, and because the precision hit doesn't need to come from a solar weapon, I can feel free to keep using my Stasis hand cannon or Scout rifle, both of which are the primaries I use for the Renewal Grass build I've been enjoying so much, playing into the Frigid Glare artifact perk. As soul-destroying as farming solo ops can be, it does at least enable some chain reaction ad clear playstyles that feel really good as long as you don't have players nearby taking most of the available kills. Destiny is a game that suffers greatly from players taking your kills. A lot of in-game mechanics and builds function based on kill chaining, and when you can't reliably do that, the game just feels worse because it doesn't function, essentially. There are other players online and other YouTube creators that have talked at length about this concept, but that's how the game works, and when it doesn't happen, the game doesn't really work, so. But between the Igniter modifier, Frigid Glare from the artifact, and the Headstone perk on my primary, there are a lot of stackable effects right now that interact with precision hits and precision kills. Very cool. But even so, there's no looking away from how repetitive and monotonous this game currently is, when I would otherwise be jumping for joy to try this stuff out in a lot of different contexts, which the game as is does not want me to play. Arms Week at least had hardware, but Solstice's only real contribution to activity novelty was Team Scorched. Team Scorched is an awful game mode with no redeeming qualities, and if you're one of the players who love it, I think that's admittedly pretty cool, and you should take genuine pride in your special breed of insanity, because I couldn't do it. Bias aside, I think the bad thing about Scorched is that it turns off most of the core elements of the entire game. In other seasons, this might not be so bad, but here it's devastating. Not having abilities is one thing, sure, but in Scorch you don't even get to play with your weapons, and lack interaction with most exotics or gear in the entire game. So, a core systems revamp was done to make build crafting interesting and new again this expansion, and they funnel players into a PvP mode that disables all of that? It's kind of like shooting themselves in the foot. It really is short-sighted and experientially a negative. Aspirational content like raids and dungeons are meaningless at the moment, for a wide variety of reasons. Their gear doesn't interact with the new gear system and lacks set bonuses, it doesn't drop at useful power levels, and there's essentially no reason to launch these activities. This merely adds more blocks of weight to the scale that measures how much of this game has been amputated and severed off, either literally made inaccessible, or made soft inaccessible, which is to say it still exists in the game technically, but you are discouraged in a myriad of ways from interacting with it at all. These parts of the game, which everyone who plays them will unanimously agree are the greatest and proudest aspects of Destiny, are made irrelevant in a time when we already don't have enough to meaningfully engage with. I'm obviously kind of displeased about that. I love this game, and right now it kind of sucks to play, which is probably why I don't do a whole lot of that. But it's a distinctly uncomfortable feeling to experience myself feeling this way so immediately after a major expansion launch, a time when the game needs to be feeling most alive. D2 feels even more gacha than Rising. Destiny Rising is launching soon, a Destiny gacha game that'll be playable on mobile and presumably PC, maybe console eventually, not sure. Rising has very high quality gameplay that Destiny diehards have really enjoyed quite a lot, and I'm looking forward to it. I will be playing it. There's a lot to see and do. There are activities to enjoy as a group or by yourself, and there are characters and storylines we've never seen before to discover and be awed by. Destiny Rising is exciting to many players who've played betas and spoken about it in a way that Destiny 2 currently isn't. And yet, Destiny 2 is the game that feels more uninspired and more blandly structured like a gacha game. Arms Week begins, and there's a bit of hype, but then it deflates. Solstice begins, and there's a bit of hype, but then it deflates. The game doesn't possess a longevity that isn't being artificially fed into the construct by the developers, intentionally and actively, week to week. Even when it came to seasonal weekly challenges, in previous seasons, I would partake of those in supplement to the storyline I was experiencing, in supplement to whatever new game mode or activity I was learning and mastering. Now, weekly events and challenges are the sole thing left to us, and since gacha games at least do have meaty storylines and interesting characters to follow from event to event, they leave Destiny 2 in the dust in this regard. So it's actually even more underwhelming than this section title gestures at. Flagship activities matter. Seasonal storylines matter, even if they're something slight and minimal and told through occasional dialogue or comms chatter while you play missions. I think another thing that burns is actually related to that. Reclamation, as the in-game menus would fool you into believing exists as anything other than the name of the current battle pass, does actually have some semblance of narrative flavor text. It does have comms chatter. But none of it actually says anything, reveals any interesting character interactions, or advances any kind of narrative at all. No new events happen from week to week that causes that dialogue to meaningfully change. The characters you hear speak don't comment on the current stuff happening, like Arms Week or Solstice, even though the only way to interact with those events is through the portal, and so wouldn't it make sense that we get some kind of observations or reactions or dialogue about those events from characters in this universe to make us feel like this is actually happening? If not narrative momentum, then at least including that can help affairs feel a little more immersive and real. None of the dialogue does anything worth caring about, or puts a heavy weight inside my heart the way some of the chatter from Season of the Haunted, or Season of the Seraph, or Season of the Wish so often did. Nothing. The entire moment-to-moment experience is so transparently filler, of the worst kind in the worst way. I know myself well enough to know that if this launched with some cool activity, specific to this season, whatever it may be, that I could play both by myself and in groups of 3, and improve at, I would have a lot more fun and feel a lot more at ease. Something like Onslaught, or like The Coil, or like The Nether. Something new and enjoyable that would give my friends and I an activity to share, instead of locking us in solo ops, while still experiencing a new step in this universe. Something, that lets us feel like we're all growing stronger together, not just in terms of equipment and numbers, but also our understanding of a new game mode we're learning to use all these cool new systems on. Because we do have all these cool new systems, and they're kind of purposeless, because they're not being applied to anything. Something like that, just that much, would have made all the difference. The portal is boring, and for those who are tempted toward defensiveness, I will kindly remind you that the players who actually enjoy the grind, like myself, are actually the ones who will hit that brick wall of disappointment the hardest. Because once you reach 400, or Fortuna forbid 450, and you have your tier 5s, and you're feeling good and satisfied with your progression, then what? That grind that you enjoyed is over. There is nothing there for you. There is no terminus or a conclusion to this. You're not really pursuing this growth for anything. There is nothing to aspire to in Destiny right now for the majority of hardcore or midcore players, and while some can probably get by and coast on taking this as an opportunity to approach the game in a more relaxed manner, even relaxing doesn't quite hit the way it did, because it feels like sitting down in an empty, hollowed-out aluminum shed with holes in the roof, the rain dripping in a puddle a few inches from where I'm restlessly tapping my foot on the floor, waiting for something to happen.